end of this tutorial, you will be able to understand default values and how to define default values. So, in the previous tutorial, we were using dating app, and these two tables we were working on. So, let's again use our database here. Let me execute it. We are into a dating app database. Now, let me describe my two tables present inside it. So, firstly, the users table. You will see that we have two fields here which can be null, and we don't have any default values there, right? We are not defining any default values because it is coming as null, right? Now, let's describe another table, users one. We have uh, these two fields which cannot be null, and we are not defining default values. So we when we create a table, we can specify a default value using some syntax, but we can also use alter the table. We can also use alter command in the table, but in the series we haven't covered this yet. So I will tell you how we will be creating a table using default integrated into the create table command. So as of now, if I try to insert something insert into let me insert something into users one, because users one we have not null constraint applied, right, as we discussed in the previous tutorial. If you don't know how this works, go back to the previous tutorial and get it understand. Ins- Insert into users one. The fields are username, comma, email, values. I am not entering any value here. What will happen, right? Let me try executing it. It will fail, right? This is what we discussed last time. Column count doesn't match the value counted row 1, because we are using these two columns, but we are not adding any value to them. Let me just remove these columns and then again try to insert something. Field username doesn't have a default value, so this is the reason. If we have anything not null constraint applied and we are not passing any value, what will be the default value we will be using there? But the default will also work when we are not using any kind of not null constraint, right? So let me create one table first with not null not applied users 2. That means I am not applying any not null constraint there. um, Again, username with varchar 50, comma, email with varchar 100, right? Let me try to execute it. But here, let me just define default constraint. Default, if my username is not entered, then what will be the default value? Let's say not defined, right? Let me try to execute it. Right now, let's describe this table users to. What different we will see there? Here we will be seeing, instead of null, default is saying not defined. That means when we will be not adding any value here, it will say not defined, right? Now let's insert something into it. Insert into users 2. Here we have username comma email. Values will be, let's say, firstly add user 1 and email will be ab user1 at the rate abc.com. This is the first value, and second value, let's say, we are not defining it. So let's first apply this one, right? And let's try to show you the value users to. Oops, extra character. Let's remove that and execute the statement. It has some value now. Now, if I try to insert something with value not defined, user to, let me pass nothing here. User to values. We are not defining any values here. What you will be able to see. Execute the statement and then run again. Select star from users to. What will be visible there? So here we added default constraint on username but not on email. So when we inserted nothing, then it added not defined and null, right? So this is how not default works. Now when we were in user 1 table, here we had not null. Now let me create one more table here. Create table users 3, where we will be again adding username with varchar 50 not null, and then we can define default here as well. Default will be again, let's say, name not defined. Then we have something another as email varchar 100, let's say, not null. This is our second table. So here what we are doing, these two, both the columns are not null and username is default, right? We are defining default value. Let's execute it. My table is created. Let me describe this table users 3. Here you will see both fields will not accept nulls and username is having some default value. Now let's try to insert something here. Let me try insert the same values into user 3, right? Now let me try to insert only email there, right? What will happen? This will pass, but both the values are not null. Still, we are not adding the value to username. We are adding the value only to email, and still it is passing. Now let's see select star from users 3 what it will show. So first record we added this user 1 and second record only the user 1 email, right? Let me try to execute it. Oh, sorry, we have added it to user 3. Let's try it again, right? It is added, you see, email in users 3. Let me execute this statement. You will see that while both the columns in my users 3 table are not null and we only added email into the table values, still I have the default value added into the username, right? Null not defined. Now if I try to insert here, insert 3, if I try to include no values here, what it will have the error, email doesn't have a default value, right? And let me try to execute it. It will not be added because this statement gave the error. Username was passed because username had the default value but email is not null and doesn't have the default value. So that's the reason it got failed. So this is how default value works even if we have not null defined in a column or we haven't defined not null, we will get the default value if we do not fill it, right?